He may not be the super soldier we want, but he's the one we deserve. I'm talking about John Walker, the US agent. Hi, I'm Nando, and in this series, I take a Marvel Comics character who has just been introduced to the trading card game Marvel Snap and break down their history, their powers, their personality, and give you some reading recommendations so you know who they are. And at the end of the video, we'll talk about their Marvel Snap card and look at how well that relates to their character from the comics. This week we have a character that I think is pretty simple, and I think most people probably already know a lot about him because he was the main character, or a main character, in a Marvel Cinematic Universe show. And unlike, say, Baron Zemo, the version of US Agent that we saw in Captain Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a very faithful version of the comic character. Not to say that Zemo wasn't or that he was a bad character, but I do think they took some liberties, didn't do everything you would expect in a Zemo story. John Walker did. So here's the basic story. Shows up for the first time in Captain America issue 323, written by Mark Grunwald with art by Paul Neary, John Beatty, Ken Fredenowitz, and Diana Albers. So John's from Georgia. Pretty normal life, had a brother who died in the army in a helicopter crash that inspired John to want to join the armed services himself. He did, had a good career, honorably discharged, and he got involved with the Power Broker, who in Marvel Comics is a guy who just gives out superpowers, whose name happens to be Curtis Jackson, which is also 50 Cent's name, which I always thought was weird. John plans to be a wrestler, but he ends up getting involved with becoming a superhero, creates the identity of the Super Patriot, and goes on tour. This catches the attention of Captain America. Captain America's like, hey, whatever this demonstration thing is, you gotta stop, it's dangerous. He and John get in a fight. It doesn't really go anywhere. Captain America's kind of like, that was weird. And Captain America in general has not been loving being Captain America recently. Where in the 80s, they're asking him to do things he didn't want to do. So Steve Rogers gives up being Captain America. Val Cooper, a very savvy government agent who you may recognize from X-Men 97, recognizes that there's this other guy named the Super Patriot who's doing what you'd expect a Captain America to do. Maybe he should be the new Captain America, and hey, maybe he'll be someone we can control. He'll be someone who'll be more receptive to taking orders and things like that. So they recruit John, and John becomes Captain America. It doesn't go great. First of all, he does bring one of his friends who was part of his demonstration before, Lamar, who becomes Battlestar. It doesn't go great for John. He's not a very good Captain America. And not to say that he's terrible at it, but like, he can't follow Steve Rogers. He has a temper. He's not as stable as Steve Rogers was, but is to say, like, Steve Rogers was like the most stable guy ever. John Walker is kind of just a regular guy. He's a little bit more angry, a little bit more impulsive, but that in a Captain America suit makes things a million times worse. This high profile he has now obtained also causes some problems. His two friends, who were part of his little battalion before, become his new villains, right-winger and left-winger, which is very silly. And the Watchdogs, an anti-superhuman militia, kill John's parents. So John kind of loses it. He gets help from Captain America, and then he quits. And by quits, they fake his death, and they pretend he's a different guy named Jack Daniels. They give him a little bit of plastic surgery, I think, or something like that. They teach him to speak a little bit differently, and they give him a new costume. They say, you're the US agent. And it is pretty much the Captain America costume, but with black and white and like a different kind of star thing. But like, I don't know how you could not see this guy and be like, hey, John Walker did die recently, for sure. But also, this guy showed up, and he's pretty much John Walker, but in black, and he's, you know, just as big of a jerk as John Walker was. So like, that's him, right? We can all figure that out. I don't know. And John Walker's next big move, and I would say his biggest move for the immediate future, is he would join the West Coast Avengers. And I'd say personality-wise, John Walker takes himself very seriously in a way that a lot of the rest of West Coast Avengers don't, right? This is the West Coast Avengers that has Hawkeye and Wonder Man and Fun Beast, and they're all having parties, and John Walker's like going up to his room to work and be like, these clowns don't even take it seriously. The guy that I think, when I was reading, because I went back and read some of the John Walker solo series, some of his other appearances, he reads a lot like Peacemaker does before all of the character development from the series, but like, you know, the Suicide Squad in first and second episode Peacemaker, where like he has a very specific way of doing things and he's very tightly wound. And then because of that, he doesn't really get along with members of groups, but he doesn't hate these guys, and he's not a bad guy on this team or anything like that. He's just kind of a hard ass. He eventually joins Force Works, which becomes West Coast Avengers 2.0. He also kind of becomes a cop. There's this interesting shift in the 2000s from him being Captain America again to him being basically Judge Dredd. To like, his outfit changed completely, and I would say like he even got a lightsaber, but a baton that a cop would use. And he also has a complicated relationship with Val Cooper, the government agent who recruited him to be Captain America. She's always been kind of his handler. She'll call him in and be like, hey, US agent, go do a thing. And he'll say, Val Cooper, I don't want to do that. And she'll say, I don't care what you want, go do it. And they also hook up sometimes or something. It's weird. She's very manipulative, but on the other side, like, you do get the sense that she kind of likes him. It could be because he does what she says, but also I think they're the same kind of people. They're people in these groups of like crazy, extreme superheroes who have all these superpowers, who think of themselves as the more grounded, straight shooters. As far as abilities goes, John Walker has the traditional super soldier skill set, but he was also trained by a couple of SHIELD agents and people that would train someone like this. Basically, like Taskmaster trained him to use the shield because he was taking up the mantle, and unless you're a super serious ultimate frisbee player, you don't know how to use that thing. So he not only got the Captain America powers, but he was given a crash course on how to do Captain America stuff. I would say the biggest difference between John and most of these superheroes is he does see himself as kind of more of the common man. Like I said, he's from Georgia, humble beginnings. Like, I think when John Walker works, it's when he exists in opposition to another character or as a foil for another character. Like having a story where Captain America does something, and then instead of that, it's John Walker, and having characters go like, oh, he's messing it up. He's not supposed to do it like that because maybe he's too impulsive, maybe he's too violent, but maybe he just doesn't deal with people the same way Captain America does. He's a salt of the earth guy in a different way than someone who grew up in Brooklyn, so he can relate to people from middle America in a way that like Captain America Steve Rogers totally can, but like you figure Iron Man probably can't. He's also always had a humongous chip on his shoulder because of the replacement Captain America thing. He's a character who clearly knows his place in this universe. He knows kind of how much people take him seriously, and it motivates him sometimes to be a better hero, but a lot of the times it also motivates him to make mistakes. As far as friends go, he's got Lamar, Battlestar, a character that survives in the comics. He has a sister who's also a secret agent. It's complicated. Read the most recent US agent story and you'll get the gist of that. Besides that, doesn't have too much family. He gets along well enough with the other Captain America characters. He was just in a story with Bucky and Steve and Sam. And he is apparently on the Thunderbolts now in the comics and in the movies. So this is one of those things where it seems like they made the decision that this is what's going to happen in the movies. And then in the comics, they were like, let's make a Thunderbolts comic with most of these guys on it. So he's just introduced onto the Thunderbolts, but I think we think it's funny that he's introduced in Thunderbolts season as if that is a thing that he is known for. As far as stories, there are 3 solo US agent stories that I think are all pretty good representations of his deal. His first solo story, US Agent 1 by Mark Grunwald with art by MC Wyman, Keith Williams, Bob Sharon, and Clem Robbins, I think is a great introduction to his character. It's a very small scale story, but it's got a lot of personality to it and gives you a good sense for how this character existed in the Marvel Comics universe when he was created. And then if you want something more recent, 2020's American Zealot by Christopher Priest and Matthew Rosenberg with art by Carl Story, Matt Milla, VC Joe Scabino, and George Jonti. So it's interesting to say this is the one with the sister. So this does get into a lot of his backstory, kind of rewrites some of it, but not really. But if you want to get a good introduction to that, he says it all in this book. In fact, in pretty much every one of his solo books, the first issue is just him explaining his backstory again, but that's fine. That's good. Not everybody knows it. But this is also a story set in Middle America, so I think it's interesting to see him trying to deal with a threat that like isn't necessarily an Avengers level threat, or at least it doesn't seem like it until it becomes one. But seeing him deal with it in a different way and like seeing how people react to him, like, I don't know, his thing is he's kind of charming when he works, and this is a good example of that. Speaking of that, Wyatt Russell's version of the character from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he is such a good version of John Walker. I have plenty of problems with that series, and especially with how that character is used and like why I don't think they went as far as it seems like they should have, or maybe they wanted to. I don't know, but either way, just in terms of taking the humility and the anger and all the complicated inner workings of John Walker and putting them into this character, I think Wyatt Russell did an excellent job. I love how personally he takes everything, but also like how genuinely you can tell he really cares about this. He just doesn't really know how to do it. And he's trying to follow the greatest human being that ever lived, pretty much. Like it's a job that no one can do, but he's definitely not the right person for it. I also like that they play up how much he's a cop because he's a cop. So in Marvel Snap, US Agent is a 2 cost, 3 power, and he has the ongoing effect of 4, 5, and 6 cost cards here having -3 power. So I'm not completely sure where we got this from, besides just it's kind of like what Captain America does. Like Captain America gives cards on his side extra power, right? And like Captain America is one of those cards that isn't used that much anyway. But John Walker is like a bizarro Man Thing. Man Thing affects 1 to 3 cost cards negatively, and he does that for 4 to 6 cost cards. And he does it with a little bit more oomph, but that's because 6 cost cards tend to have higher power than 1 cost cards. But I mean, the Man Thing connection isn't that strange because Man Thing was technically kind of part of the Super Soldier project. Like, I guess there's some super soldiers that are like, yeah, that's another super soldier, but like it didn't work exactly the same way you would expect. But then you have like Man Thing, who's like not even a little bit. But he was also a member of the Weapon Plus program. So I guess that's a connection. I really don't know. He's kind of like the opposite of Captain America in that Captain America empowers guys on his side of the field. He hurts guys on the other side of the field, I guess. You know, there's no Val Cooper card, so he can't synergize well with her. He doesn't synergize incredibly well with other Thunderbolts. If anything, he kind of synergizes negatively with guys like Thunderbolt Ross. You know, synergizes pretty well with Luke Cage. But besides that, yeah, I don't think there's too much to this character. This feels like one of those effects that could have gone to a bunch of characters. It's the same way that I don't really think Man Thing's version of this makes that much sense, honestly. Like there are characters like Vertigo is a mutant who can make you dizzy, and I think then would be like makes you less powerful because you're just not able to stand up straight. That's kind of what this power feels like, but for some reason it's John Walker's got it. And listen, this card is easily the least interesting card of this season. Like it's a card that if I got it, I'm sure I could figure out something to do with it, but like compared to some of these other cards that are coming up, it's not even close. So let me know what you think. Is this a good version of John Walker from the comics? Do you like him? Like, is he one of your favorite Avengers? Is he your favorite Captain America pastiche character? Because there are quite a few in Marvel Comics, and we'll talk about one of them next week. And if you got to make this character snap card, what would you do with it? Like, what do you think is a power that he should have? Should he be like a slightly worse Captain America, maybe? That's something maybe. But like Captain America automatically only bumps people up by 1, so it's like, what's he gonna be, a 2 cost that does that, or like a 4 cost that does that? So he's like, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, he's all right. So thank you for watching. Share this with other people that like Marvel Comics and play Marvel Snap. I've been Nando, and I'll see you soon.